Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive. Today we're taking a close look at something really fascinating, hypnochanneling. We'll be focusing specifically on Naomi Shu's work on her YouTube channel, Hypno Vibes. You might already know it. It's where she kind of delves into higher consciousness, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff, especially when you consider her book, The Next Level You. She goes pretty deep into the potential of hypnochanneling to help us unlock hidden parts of ourselves and maybe even connect with something, bigger than ourselves.
Totally. And you know what? We have this amazing session to break down today. So she's working with Navi, her friend, who acts as the channeler, you could
Yep.
say,
Right?
and they connect with the energy of Mr. Sugano. He's Naomi's sister's husband. But here's where things get super interesting. Mr. Sugano's dealing with a really serious health condition right now. And during the session, he starts speaking perfect English through Navi, even though his native language is Japanese.
Whoa, wait, really? That's wild. It's like right out of the gate, you've got this mind-blowing detail. Makes you wonder if maybe language barriers just kind of vanish in this, I don't know, altered state of consciousness. What do you think's going on there?
It really makes you question what we think we know about communication, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
is it some deeper part of Mr. Sugano's mind that's coming out?
Yeah.
Or is there something else at play? I don't know.
It's definitely something worth looking into more, yeah. But I think before we get too far down that road, it might be good to step back and think about, like, what happens during hypnochanneling? What's going on? Is it like a trance or something? How does someone even become a channel in the first place?
I'm glad you brought that up because I think that would be really helpful, especially for anyone listening who might be new to this whole hypnochanneling thing. So what can you tell us about how it actually works, like the mechanics of it?
Well, based on what Naomi talks about in her work, it seems like it starts with inducing a really deep state of relaxation and focus through hypnosis. And that basically allows the channeler, in this case Navi, to tap into a different level of consciousness where they can potentially connect with other energies or um, entities even.
So it's not just relaxing. It's about reaching this totally different state of awareness,
Yeah.
like a bridge between different realms of consciousness.
Exactly. Yeah. And the really interesting part is that Naomi believes this isn't just about connecting with people who have passed away. It's about accessing universal knowledge, like this source of wisdom and insight that's always there, but usually hidden beneath our everyday awareness.
Okay, so back to this session with Mr. Sugano. He comes through, speaks English, and starts talking about his condition and his approaching transition. Given everything, what does that look like?
It's actually surprisingly peaceful. He doesn't express any fear or regret at all. It seems like he's reached a place of acceptance. He even says at one point that he doesn't need to be worried just because that illness takes over his life.
That's incredible. But is that level of acceptance always possible, especially for someone facing a terminal illness?
That's a good question. I mean, it's definitely something to admire, but I don't think everyone reaches that same point. Some people struggle with anger or denial or, a whole range of other emotions. Do you think those emotions could somehow affect the channeling process?
It really makes you think about all the psychological stuff going on here, right? Both for Mr. Sugano and for Navi, the channeler. It adds a whole other layer of complexity to this experience.
Definitely. It highlights how much we still don't know about consciousness and how it might interact with, the world around us.
Absolutely. So we know Mr. Sugano is expressing this acceptance of his situation. What else does he talk about during the session?
Well, one thing that's clear is that he's really worried about his wife's well-being. They actually talk about Naomi's plans to visit him in Japan, and he advises against her coming in person and instead suggests doing a video call.
Why's that? You'd think he'd want to see loved ones in person during this time.
Yeah, it seems like he's concerned about how it might affect Naomi emotionally to see him like that. He even says, "Do not be fearful, see, because of COVID." It's like he's being really practical, considering the risks and the potential for distress.
It's interesting how he's coming at this from such a practical and compassionate place, thinking about his own needs, but also the needs of those around him.
Exactly. And that practical side of him extends to his concerns for his wife's future, too. He assures Naomi that his wife will be taken care of, both financially and emotionally, after he's gone. They even discuss the possibility of Naomi's sister maybe moving closer to her for support.
That really shows such a deep level of love and responsibility towards his wife, even as he's dealing with his own mortality.
Definitely. It's clear he wants to make sure she's okay, even after he's not physically there. It's really touching. And what's also really cool is that even with everything going on, Mr. Sugano's sense of humor still comes through.
Oh, I love that. Humor in the face of such a serious situation. Tell me more about those lighter moments.
Well, there's this part where he tells Naomi to go see him in dreams, which is just so sweet and playful, you know? It brings a little lightness to what's otherwise a very intense situation.
It's almost as if he's trying to reassure her, reminding her that their connection doesn't have to end just because he's physically gone.
That's an interesting way to look at it. And it kind of hints at the idea that death might not be this absolute ending that we often see it as.
It definitely raises some big questions about the nature of consciousness and whether connections can exist beyond the physical realm.
Yeah, for sure. And it makes you wonder. Yeah, it does make you think, doesn't it? About
Mhm.
finding those moments of light, even when things are, dark and dealing with grief and loss and all that.
Speaking of complexity,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting to look at this session through a cultural lens, too. We have Naomi, who's in the U.S., connecting with her sister's husband, Mr. Sugano, who's in Japan. Two different cultures, two different ways of looking at life and death. But they find this common ground through hypnochanneling.
That's such a good point. It suggests hypnochanneling might be tapping into something universal, like a human need to connect beyond those physical limitations and cultural boundaries.
Right, and if it can bridge cultural divides like that, what else could it do? Could it connect people from totally different backgrounds or even different time periods?
Whoa, that is a wild thought. Imagine tapping into the wisdom and experiences of people from centuries ago. It really challenges how we think about time and connection.
It really does. Let's circle back to Mr. Sugano for a second. We've talked about his acceptance, his humor, and his concern for his wife. Is there an overall message that comes through in his communication?
I think if there's one thing that stands out, it's this message of embracing life, like really embracing it, even when you're facing the end. Remember, he said, enjoy the time that you're on Earth. It's such a simple statement, but it's so profound too.
It's something you see in a lot of spiritual and philosophical teachings, right? Like being present, savoring each moment, and finding the joy in everyday life.
Exactly. But is it always that easy to do, especially when you're going through something as tough as what Mr. Sugano's facing? It's easy to say live in the moment, but how do you actually do that when life throws you these, curveballs?
That is the question, isn't it? I mean, life isn't always happy and easy. There are hard times, setbacks. Grief is just a natural part of being human. How do we balance that with this idea of embracing life when there's also pain and suffering?
It's definitely complicated. I don't think there's one simple answer. Maybe Mr. Sugano's message isn't about pretending the bad stuff doesn't exist. Maybe it's about acknowledging those challenges while still choosing to find those moments of joy, of connection.
Finding that balance, finding that strength, even when things are difficult. Not pretending everything's perfect,
Yeah.
but finding the strength to keep going, to appreciate the beauty and love that life does offer, even when it's hard.
And maybe that's part of what makes his message so powerful, It's not this naive optimism, it's coming from experience. He's faced his own mortality and found a way to embrace life, even with the challenges.
It makes his advice so much more meaningful because it's real, right? It's not just some feel-good saying. It's wisdom that comes from going through really, really tough times.
And it makes you wonder, is this something we can all learn? This ability to find peace and acceptance when facing death. Is it something we can cultivate even if we don't have access to hypno-channeling?
That's a really good question. Can we learn this? Is it a perspective we develop through practice and introspection? Or is it something else, something that needs a different state of consciousness to access?
It's hard to say for sure, but the fact that we're asking these questions says a lot about the power of this session and how much Mr. Sugano's message makes us think.
It's pushing us to think beyond what we usually assume about life and death and the possibilities of consciousness. That's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating.
Yeah, it's not just about the how-to of hypno-channeling. It's about exploring what it means to be human, to think about the big questions, and to find meaning and connection even in really challenging situations.
That suggestion from Mr. Sugano to go see him in dreams really sticks out to me. It implies that maybe connection with loved ones doesn't have to end when they're physically gone. Could dreams be a way to access that, even if we don't fully get how it works?
It's such a cool concept. Dreams have always been mysterious, right? They tap into our subconscious, our fears, our desires. What if they also let us connect with those who've passed?
It opens up so many possibilities. Imagine the conversations, the wisdom we could gain if we could intentionally connect with loved ones in our dreams.
It would totally change how we think about grief in the afterlife, wouldn't it? And it challenges the current scientific understanding of consciousness, which often struggles to explain these kinds of experiences.
It would be a huge shift.
Absolutely. It reminds us we still have so much to learn about consciousness and how our minds work.
It's amazing that even with all our scientific progress, there's still so much we don't know about consciousness. It's like we're just starting to figure things out.
It's humbling and exciting at the same time. There's so much more to explore, so many possibilities out there.
We're in this time where science and spirituality are kind of meeting in these really interesting ways.
Mm.
And hypnochanneling, with its mix of hypnotic techniques and exploration of consciousness, seems to be right at that crossroads.
Yeah, like a bridge between two worlds that we've often seen as totally separate, even opposite. And maybe by exploring these intersections, we can understand ourselves and the universe better.
It reminds us that we don't have all the answers. There's always more to learn. And the journey of discovery is just as important as the destination itself.
And sometimes those big insights come from the most unexpected places.
Like a hypnochanneling session with a man speaking a language he didn't know while alive. Who would have thought?
Life is full of surprises, that's for sure. And sometimes those surprises lead us to the most amazing discoveries.
I think that's the perfect transition to our next point. This whole session has been such a surprising mix of the deep and the practical. We've talked about big truths and philosophical ideas, but there's also this very grounded side to Mr. Sugano's communication.
You're right, it's not all about these mysteries of consciousness. It's about how we handle real life, too.
Right. He gives practical advice about Naomi's visit. He's worried about his wife's finances. He reassures her that she'll be taken care of.
It shows that even when we're thinking about the spiritual and metaphysical stuff, we're still rooted in our human experience. We still have responsibilities, relationships, and practical things to deal with.
And I think that's what makes this session so relatable. It's not just about these big concepts that are hard to understand. It's about a man facing death who still cares deeply about the people he loves.
Yeah, it's like even facing death, love and connection still matter so much. It's really beautiful.
It brings us back to that idea of living in the moment, right? It's not just a concept. It's something Mr. Sugano is actually living even as he's, getting ready to transition. He's telling us to really appreciate our time, our relationships, the things that make life worth living.
It's a good reminder, especially these days when everything's so fast-paced and hectic. It's easy to get swept up in the chaos and forget to just enjoy being alive.
We get so focused on what's next that we miss the journey itself. Mr. Sugano is urging us to slow down, be present, appreciate each moment.
And that means embracing all of it, the good and the bad. It's not about pretending everything's perfect. It's about accepting the tough stuff, but also making room for joy, laughter, connection.
Finding that balance, right? The strength to deal with life's ups and downs and still appreciate it. Not pretending things are easy, but finding the strength to keep going, to find beauty and love, even when things are tough.
I think that's one of the most important things we can take away from this whole deep dive. It's not just about hypnochanneling or connecting with people who have passed on. It's about remembering what really matters.
Being grateful for what we have right now, taking care of our relationships, and living life fully, even with all its ups and downs.
And realizing that even with loss and grief, there's room for growth, healing, and even transformation.
Mr. Sugano's story really shows us that death doesn't have to be the end. It can be a transition. And maybe practices like hypnochanneling can help us understand that transition in a new way.
It definitely challenges our usual ideas about life and death, making us think about consciousness maybe existing beyond our bodies.
It's something people have wondered about forever, from ancient spiritual traditions to modern science. And as we learn more about consciousness, maybe our understanding of life and death will keep changing too.
It's a journey of discovery that needs an open mind, a willingness to question things, and a lot of curiosity.
Wrapping up this deep dive, I'm left with this feeling of awe. Mr. Sugano's message, his peace, his love for his wife, it's all really touched me.
And his story reminds us that even with life's toughest challenges, there's still beauty, lessons to be learned, and connections to treasure.
So what stands out to you listening? Has this changed how you think about grief and loss? Does it make you curious about consciousness maybe existing beyond our bodies?
What part of Mr. Sugano's message about embracing life speaks to you the most? It's definitely worth thinking about.
Absolutely.
And maybe by thinking about these things, we can understand ourselves and the world around us a little better.
This deep dive into hypnochanneling and Mr. Sugano's goodbye has been a really meaningful journey.
It's made us question what we thought we knew, broadened our perspective, and left us with a sense of wonder about consciousness and the power of connection.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration. Until next time, Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep connecting.
Yes, so now I like to have Navi's conscious awareness to be here. And this time, I like to invite the energy that is related to this person. His last name is Sugano. Actually, I'm not too sure. I forgot about his first name, but is my sister's husband. So I think his physical condition is critical at this point. So whatever the appropriate energy can come through this body, I like to ask some questions. So when I count to 3, you'll be here. 1, coming through this body. 2, almost here. And 3.
Hello.
Yes, who I'm speaking with. I see you're smiling.
You've seen me many times.
So can you tell me who you are?
The one that you are questioning about
About my
sister's husband.
Right, so Sugano, Mr. Sugano,
Yes.
you are his soul or higher self?
Doesn't have to be broken down, but I am.
I never heard he speaking English. So tell me.
That is what is coming through this body.
I see. And I know he's a funny guy and very different person compared with others that I know when I was there in Osaka. And he likes to drink beer. So what is the purpose for you to have this cancer?
To live in the most difficult situation and not be so worried that even though it is the most difficult situation one could come across in this human life, that it keeps you feeling happy, that you do not need to feel worried at any time just because that illness takes over your life.
Today when I was talking to Navi about this, I smiled. I said, I know it's from the human's perspective is one thing, but I think you are leaving eventually, and also for my sister to
It has changed so much already.
In what way? After I talked to her?
You have given her some recognition of you, of what she could be, yes. Your input was important.
Right.
But she has felt that her change needs to happen from being around others that are open, not to be closed off and not to be reserved at any activities that come her way, to be living happily and to have breaks of peacefulness from time to time, not to be worried so much.
So she is going to see your leaving.
Will happen soon.
I had that feeling. And I don't need
The body itself is deteriorating in a way that will not recover in the time that is needed, yes.
So it's better for you to rest at home than in a hospital?
Having ones close to me will be most joyful. To have it in a setting that is comfortable, yes.
And I feel, do I need to see you before that happens?
A phone call should be sufficient.
I will do.
Video call.
Oh, I see. Wow, I
You
feel...
must see me in the state that I am, but do not be fearful.
See, because of COVID, so I did not go to Japan for 4 years. And
Time permits. If you feel that this is something that you should be there in person, then do it. But if you do not feel if it's appropriate and that you would break down at that time when you arrive to see me, do not do it.
I'm going to talk to my sister and see if she wants me to be there.
Do so.
And you think she knows?
She has a hunch. She is aware, yes.
She did not say anything to me. She did not know.
She does not want to admit it, but she is aware that time is coming.
So can you tell me again, what's the purpose of you? You're leaving now.
I have other soul missions to conduct. This life itself has been completed for now,
I see. You did what you needed.
yes.
And so the reason I met with you and then introduced you to my sister was not by accident.
No, it's not.
I'm going to miss your jokes.
You'll see me in dreams. You don't have to
Okay.
be so emotional.
I used to argue with you in Japan just for over some small little things, and I know how you are gonna act and what I can say to, and what you are going to say, and then eventually you're gonna be okay with everything. I understand how you do things very well, and also appreciate when we were all in Beijing that you mentioned to me that there's nothing for me to worry or my family to worry about my sister, because you will leave everything for her. And
I'll leave her in a way that she'll be okay to live her life.
And do you think that she, of course it's up to her, I will love for her to maybe come here and spend some time here instead of staying in that apartment by herself? What do you think?
Could have that conversation
With-
as soon as you feel she is ready to have that conversation. Let her go through the process of death and understanding.
I'm gonna call him, you, in a couple days.
Video call. But if you feel as if you need to be there in person, have that conversation.
I will ask. Thank you very much. And I'm glad that we had a conversation like this. Because when I saw your text message, I just knew.
Time is growing closer and closer.
And you will not experience much pain.
Just bliss.
That's beautiful. Thank you again. And I will talk to you again.
In your dreams.
Thank you. And I don't know what to say, but just enjoy the time that you are on Earth.
I always do.
Yes, I know you do. I will speak to you very soon in person, on the phone. Thank you.
Go over what feels right.
Bye now.